Sechet Yoma 44. We began the Gemara with a baraita that's talking about the halacha that when the Kohen Gadol is doing the ketoret in the Kodesh and then the Kodesh Kodashim, on all the things that he does in Kodesh Kodashim, no one else is allowed to be in the Hechal. We learned this from an explicit pasuk, Kol Adam lo yeh be'ol moed, ובואו לכפר בקודש עד צאתו וכיפר בעדו בעד ביתו בעד כל קהל ישראל. So we're going to discuss the details of exactly what this applies to and where exactly the other Kohanim are not allowed to be. For sure in the Hechal itself, but what about the courtyard also? And also at what points? So we asked, En li ela b'shat haktara, for sure during the Ketoret, that the Kohen's going to do, and well, for sure the Kodesh Kodashim, also the one that he does in the Kodesh, which is the daily one. And how about, so we know Ketoret, but what about Bishat Matan Damim Minayin? When he goes into the Kodesh during, in the Bet HaMikdash on Yom Kippur, he sprinkles blood, both in the Kodesh Kodashim and in the Kodesh. So how do you know that for that also? So coming to atone, and sprinkling of the blood is something that atones. So then I only know when he goes in. What about when he goes out? It says I'd say until he goes out. So yeah, therefore, the whole time that the Kohen Gadol is inside, no one else is allowed to be in there. Very good. Now, the Braita is continuing now, and that's the rest of the pasuk. Kaparato kodemet lechaparat beto. Lechaparat beto kodemet lechaparat echa v'kohanim. Just look at the order of items mentioned in the pasuk. First, he has to bring atonement for himself, his house, and then for other Kohanim, and then for everybody else. And we saw the reason is, first you have to take care of your own business, make sure that you are innocent, and only then you can plead on behalf of other people. So that's the Braita. Now the Gemara is going to ask a question. Amar Mor, you thought to say, there was a Havamina to say, maybe that the sanctuary has to be empty during the time of Ketoret, and only during Ketoret, not when you're sprinkling blood. Why would I have thought that? May mashma, Amar Rava, V'chen Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Avdimi, V'chen Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Kera, V'chiper ba'ado ba'ad beto ba'ad kol kehal Yisrael. Ezu kapara sheshava lo u'lebeto lechav, Kohanim u'chol kehal Yisrael, ve'omer zeh haktarat HaKetoret. The reason is because of that continuation of the pasuk that said whatever he's doing is going to be do kapara on 3 levels for himself, for the Kohanim and for everybody else. What is one service that does kapara for all 3? It's only ketoret, because if you're talking about the animals, it's the pod that does it for him and his family and the Kohanim, and it's the sa'ir that atones for all the rest of Israel. So there isn't one thing that is that accounts for everyone. So since the pasuk continues with this whole list, for sure has to be talking about the Ketoret. That's why I would have thought that it's during the Ketoret that this pasuk applies. That's when the Kohen has to be alone, and not necessarily during other parts. But therefore, the rest of the pasuk comes to include, yes, all the other parts too. Now that we established that, we kind of make a 180 and say, Ketoret mechaperet. Wait, how do you even know that Ketoret does kapara? We know that blood service, that's always does kapara. That's like throughout all the korbanot. But ketoret, is that really what it's for? Yes, it is. So this is from Korach, right? When you had all the people that were rebelling and say, who's Moshe and Aaron? Who made them leaders? And there was a Magifa, and Aaron's running with the ketoret, and the ketoret atones for the people and stops the Magifa. So yes, we see ketoret does affect atonement. The time of Ishmael, al makefar mechaperet al lashon hara. Yabo davar shebachashai v'chaper maaseh chashai. It's even midah keneged midah. It atones for lashon hara specifically, just like lashon hara usually is told in private. You whisper secrets, gossip about other people, and the ketoret is brought on a daily basis in the sanctuary in Yom Kippur, not only in the Kodesh Kodashim, but then nobody else there. So you need something that is mechaper inside privately to do a sin for outside. And actually this applies also to Korach. Their sin, the people's sin was actually Lashon Hara. They were saying negative things about Moshe and Aaron, which were not true, and conspiring in their tents. So that is appropriate. So there you go. Yes, ketoret is absolutely does mechaper, and that's the main thing that we have to make sure that Kohen is not alone for. But not only that, also the blood service in the Kodesh, there has to be alone for. Good. Now that we established that, everyone agrees. Now we're only going to ask exactly where do you have to be, does it have to be empty? So if we have a picture here, we have three sections. Well, we have four. We have the Kodesh Kodashim, and we have the Hechal. Well, no one can go in the Kodesh Kodashim except the Kohen Gadol. So we're not even talking about that. For sure, you cannot have anybody else in the Hechal, as long as the Kohen is in here doing either the Ketoret on the Mizbach HaZahav, or the Ketoret in the Kodesh Kodashim, or doing the blood. No one can be in the Hechal. Everyone agrees to all of that. Now, you also have the Ulam. The second discussion today is going to be about the Ulam. Is the Ulam, is it attached to the Hechal, or is the Ulam attached to the outside? Right now, for our purposes, Ulam is attached to the Hechal. Okay, so you have Hechal and Ulam. No one can be there. Everyone agrees to that. But how about the rest of the courtyard? Well, the Ezrat Yisrael and the beginning of Ezrat Kohanim, before you get to Mizbeach, everyone agrees that that's fine. You can be there, right? They can stand there. The only issue is here between the Mizbeach and the Ulam. This space between here where the steps are, right? What about that space? Is that prohibited from anyone from being there in all cases or only in some cases? We're going to see that it applies, in fact, only in some cases for the ketoret that's done out here. Then no one can be no one can be in the courtyard. However, the Rabbi Elazar is going to say, I'll show you on the picture because it's a little paradoxical. The Rabbi Elazar is going to teach that when the Kohen Gadol goes in the Kodesh Kodashim, then no one can be in the Echal, but they can be in the courtyard. In other words, what's the whole point of this thing? We're afraid that Kohanim might jump the gun, they might be too curious, and they might violate, so we make a fence. So if the Kohen is doing the Ketoret out here, so then we have to make a fence further out. No one is allowed to be in this entire area of the outside courtyard. But when the Kohen Gadol is on the inside in the Kodesh Kodashim, then it's sufficient to prohibit any Kohanim to be in the Hechal, right? And that's already a fence, the Hechal Nulam, but they're allowed to be in this area. Okay, even though the Kodesh Kodashim is more holy, but still further in, so the fence can also be a step further in. That's at least one explanation of the halacha that we're about to read. So Tananatam, this is a short Mishnah Masechet Kelim, Aleph Tet Porshin miben ha'ulam v'lamizbeach b'shat ha'ktara. Says not only can you be in the Echal, you have to be out, not in the courtyard. When I say courtyard, I mean just the section of the courtyard between the mizbeach and the ulam and the entrance to the Hechal. So that's it. That you have to be. No one can be there during the time of Ketoret. But there's two Ketorets. Which one? Only the Ketoret that's done on a daily basis outside on the Mizbach HaZahav, not outside, in the Hechal, on the Mizbach HaZahav. But the one for Yom Kippur inside, then Kohanim have to leave only the Kodesh, the Hechal, but they are allowed to be outside. Okay, that's Rabbi Elazar's halacha, and he's limiting the Mishnah in that case. So we have a leniency for the Ketoret that's in Kodesh Kodashim. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is very clear. We're going to have a somewhat lengthy challenge to this, but we will resolve it. So don't worry. Metiv Rav Ada Barahavav Amdila Kedi. Some say Rav Ada Barahavav brought this baraita. Some say it was just brought anonymously. Here's the baraita that is going to contradict this, but it's a long baraita. Rabbi Yosef Omer, Keshem sheporshin miben ha'olam v'lamizbeach b'shat ha'ktara, kach porshin b'shat matan par kohen Mashiach upar hedem davar shel sibur usirei avodah zara. So he's learning a new halacha. We know that on the Torah says it regarding Yom Kippur that you have to not be in the courtyard area during the time of Ketoret. So too, he says, other times of the year, other kinds of korbanot that are sprinkled in the kodesh onto the curtain, like if a kohen Kohen Gadol makes a mistake, he brings a special korban, or if the Sanhedrin makes a mistake, or if they command someone to do avodah zarah. So these are special korbanot that are sprinkled inside. Fine. And in those cases also, nobody can be in the area. Now, exactly which area is it talking about? So the Bia said, just says, Mi ben ha'olam v'la mizbeach b'shat ha'ktara. So for sure, during ha'ktara, you have to be outside the courtyard. So too, you have to leave somewhere during the blood offerings, but it doesn't specify exactly where. So Braita continues, wait a second, according to this, it's like asking itself a question. If you have to leave the whole courtyard all the time, then in what way is the Hechal on a higher level of the Mizbeach? We know there's a Mishnah in Kelim that talks about all the levels, right? That Israel is holy and Jerusalem and Harabayit, and right, each section is holier than the other. And the Hechal is holier than the courtyard. So if you're going to tell me that for all matters, the Hechal and the courtyard are the same, and just like no one can be in the Hechal, no one can be in the courtyard in every case. So in what way is it a higher level? There's got to be some case that there's a distinction that you have to empty out the Hechal, but they can be in the courtyard. So what case is that? Elam. In the Hechal, nobody can be there, not only during the Ketoret, also not during Ketoret, which we understand now would mean when you're sprinkling the blood. So when you're doing these sprinkles of blood, no one can be in the Hechal. But in the courtyard, that has to be empty only during the Ketoret. But during the blood offering, it's okay if the Kohanim can be there. Now, so that's what the Braita said. Now we have to analyze. Bishat haktara miya parshe, but it did say the only time you can have people in the courtyard is during the blood service. But during Ketoret, right? Then and poshin el bishat haktara, and it doesn't say which Ketoret. So if you have to leave the courtyard during Ketoret, doesn't that mean all of them? My love. Bishat haktara de difnai v'difnim, doesn't that mean also the one that's in Kodesh Kodashim? And that's the question, that's the challenge. Rabbi Elazar earlier said, when the Kohen Gadol does Ketoret in Kodesh Kodashim, that's far away. So you can have people standing in the courtyard, it's okay. But according to this, it said you have to leave in the courtyard during, right, and pushing Ela Bishat Haktara. That means you do have to leave the courtyard during Haktara, meaning any Haktara. That's what we think it means right now. So to answer that, we say lo bishat haktara de'echal. No, when it says everyone has to leave the courtyard, it means only during the ketoret that's done on the mizbach hazahav every day. We're not talking about the one that's inside. All right, is that a plausible reading of this braita? If so, remember over here it said there are what are the cases in which the hechal is holier, that no one can be in the hechal, but they can be in the courtyard. And it only mentioned the case of sprinkling the blood. When you sprinkle the blood, then you can't be in the Echal, but you can be in the courtyard. And it only mentioned that one case. So what about, it should have mentioned this case too, right? Vetu la aika hama'ala, ilu mehechal parashe ben bishat haktara dideh, ben bishat haktara didifnai difnim. It should have said, as a ma'ala, that the Echal you have to leave both during the ketoret that's inside, and the ketoret that's both the ketoret and the echal, and the ketoret that's in the kodesh kodashim. Whereas the courtyard is only when you're doing the regular ketoret, not when you're doing the kodesh kodashim. So it should have said that's a difference between the two. It didn't mention that difference. It only mentioned the difference about the blood offering. So we're going to answer, you know what, even though it doesn't say explicitly, we could read that in the same words. So this is actually a quote of the same exact words. But we're going to read it in differently. Hakatani ela sheba'echal poshin ben bishat haktara ben shelo bishat haktara uben haolam mizbeach en poshin ela bishat haktara. So you have to leave the echal anytime, both for ketoret and not for ketoret. And you have to leave the ulam ben al mizbeach, the courtyard. You don't have to leave except during haktara. And we mean over here haktara that's in the kodesh. Right? And not in Kodesh Kodashim. So that's what we'll say, that's what it's referring to. Wait a second, but now if it's only referring to that difference, what about the other difference that we had before? Now we replaced one, but now you lost the other one. So there's two differences that in the hechal you have to leave whether it's its own kedusha, anything done in the hechal, both it's the blood that's there and the ketoret that's there, and the one that's inside. So you always have to leave the hechal. But the one that's at the outside courtyard, you only have to leave bikdusha de hechal if you're doing something in the hechal and therefore not in the one not in the kodesh kodashim. So how can you fit both of these into the same words? You can't fit them both in because they're really basically the same thing. What you're saying is anything that's done in the kodesh, you have to leave the courtyard. But anything else, meaning the ketoret that's in kodesh kodashim, you don't have to leave the courtyard. So even though the Mishnah only mentioned, the Baraita only mentions one thing, that one thing includes both of the differences. So now we're okay. And the Baraita agrees, and with the statement of Rabbi Elazar that this law of leaving the echal applies in all cases. Leaving the courtyard does not apply to the kodesh when gadol's in kodesh kodeshim doing the ketoret there. Okay, now the next point. Amar Mor. In the Baraita, you mentioned that this is not only Yom Kippur law all year round. Whenever the Kohen Gadol does a blood service in the Kodesh, everybody has to leave the courtyard. Minalan. How does he know this? Actually, he's learning it from Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur it says kapara, and it says everyone has to leave. Those also, actually, only two out of three of them doesn't say the word kapara. Conceptually, it's like a binyanav. Anytime you're doing something in the Kodesh, you're going to have to leave. So it's the same law.
Excuse me. The last paragraph that you mentioned is not found in the Steinsaltz at all. He starts off, about Haba.
You're missing Amar Rabbi Pedat?
Oh, that's what I have. Sorry.
Yom Kippurim. Amar Abacha bar Haba. Shema mina ma'alot deoraita. V'hacha gemiri lehu. Now, remember, we mentioned before that in Mishnah Kelim, it talks about the different levels of Kedusha, going from, outside lands to Israel, Jerusalem, Har HaBayit, and then within, you have the courtyards, and then the Olam, the Echal, the Kodesh, Kodesh Kodashim. Each one is a higher level than the other. Question is are these levels midoraita or midirabanan? So he says there must be deoraita. And here's how, and the rabbis learned exactly what they are, even though they're not explicit in Torah, they derived it from tradition. How does he know that they are deoraita? If it's only to Rabbanan and you're adding on a guardrail, so then why would they only make a guardrail from this point on in this area? Why not say the entire courtyard? No Kohanim in the entire courtyard, because maybe they'll make a mistake and they'll go up the steps and then they'll go in, right? So it must be that, because logically, if it was Rabbanan, we shall follow logic and do the whole thing. Therefore, it must be Doraita. And Midoraita, this area has a special holiness. So that's why. That's his proof. But we're going to reject it. Ben העולם למזבח, כיוון דלא מפסיק מידי, מן קרא מילתא. הזרה, כיוון דאיכא מזבח חיסון, למפסיק מן קרא מילתא. No, it's totally different. Truth is, it's all to Rabbanan. But if you're standing here, there's nothing in your way. You're just going to walk up. If you're standing over here and you're thinking about walking up, you're going to say, oh, the mizbeach. That will be a reminder itself to say, oh, I'm not allowed to go past here. And so then that way you won't go up. So it could be it's all to Rabbanan, and there's a logical reason to separate from one to the other. Good. Amarava, Shema mina kedushat ulam ve'echal chada mileta hi. Teisa kadatech shete kedushot ninu ulam kufe gezera v'nekum v'nigzor gezera ligzera. So now our question is with this ulam, the entranceway. So this is not officially, the echal is in here, right? And Kodesh Kodashim is in here. But the ulam is just an entranceway. So is that considered holy like the echal or not? So Rava proves it must be yes, that it is part of the echal. Why? Because if the echal was the only holy part, and then you had to make a gezerah midrabanan, so you make a gezerah say, don't go into the ulam, no kohanim in the ulam. and that's it. Then that would be enough of a fence. How could they then say don't be in the outside area? If you add that, then that's a gezerah to another gezerah. And the rabbis can only make one gezerah on a deoraita. You can't make a double gezerah. So therefore, it must be that the ulam is considered part and parcel of the echal, so they can't go anywhere, not even in the ulam midoraita. And then the drabanan is adding only the courtyard. So that's his proof. The ulam is connected to the hechal. But we reject the proof. Lo ulam ben haolam belamizbeach hada kedushahi. Hechal ve'olam shetei kedushot. No, could be the ulam and the outside area. This and this area are all one. So when the rabbis make a gezerah, yes, they're making only one gezerah, since the ulam and the outside court area are considered part and parcel of each other, and they make a gezerah, so you can't be in any of these places. So therefore, no matter, either way, you're not going to be allowed in the courtyard. And in fact, the hechal and ulam could be shtei kedusha. That's very interesting, even though the ulam is inside and directly connected. Halachically, it's considered like outside. Okay, good. Mishnah continues. Bechol yom haya choteh b'shel kesef. Every day of the year, when the Kohen Gadol or any Kohen, whatever Kohen was doing the ketoret, he would have to go up and get embers from the small pyre on top of the mizbeach, and he would use a silver shovel. But on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol uses a golden shovel. Question is, why on all year round do you use a silver shovel? My Tama. Torah wants to limit, spare the money of the Jewish people and not have to go spend so much money, right? So it's actually easier to use gold because eventually you're going to use gold to bring it into the hechal. So on Yom Kippur, the Kohen just uses one shovel and brings it into the hechal. But all year round, we're not going to require the gold, even though you're going to have a gold one also. But the more you use it, the more it's going to get worn out. So this Kohen Gadol is only using this gold shovel once a year, right, directly in the fire, so it won't get worn out. And that's the other one that is going to be used a lot, is made out of silver, so it won't cost people so much money. That's a nice lesson. Now, my tama, why does the Kohen Gadol not do a double pouring? Usually he collects a lot with silver, pours it into a smaller golden shovel. But today he doesn't do that. He just goes directly with the golden shovel and does not transfer. The reason is Mishum Chulshat Kohen Gadol, because of the weakness of Kohen Gadol. He has to do all the service on Yom Kippur. A lot to do. If he could do one less item and not have to take so much and not have to pour it, so we make it easy on him. So another nice lesson, right? There's kind of a balance between not spending community funds, but also not overburdening the official in charge. So now you can expand these to lots of decisions that we have to make on a communal level and how we treat people. Good. Bechol yom b'shel arba'at kabim. So in the usual day, he brings the silver one can hold 4 kab, and the golden one holds 3 kab. You have to bring 3 kab into the kodesh to use to put on the mizbach hazahav. So when you transfer from 4 to 3, well, you lose one during transfer. So when you transfer it and you lose one, it goes on the floor. What do? You sweep it into the canal. There's a canal that passes through the Bet HaMikdash area to the Kidron River, and then that will get washed away. So that's how you usually do it. Now, Taneh Chada Kab Vektanya Idach Kabaim. This Baraita that we just said, we assumed there was 1, and 1 makes sense because usually he has 4, and he transfers it to 3, he loses 1. But there's another version that says that when you transfer, you lose 2 kabim. Now, this doesn't make sense. The one that says 1 kab, that's Rabbanan, goes 4 to 3. You lose 2, it can't be Rabbanan, because they said you had 4. If you lose 2, then you only have 2 left. Then you need 3, it's not enough. It can't be the BOC either. The BOC says you bring 6. The big silver shovel holds 6 kab, and then you transfer it into one that has 3. So according to him, you're losing 3 kab during the transfer. So he's losing 1 or 3. Nobody says 2. So how are we going to reconcile this one that says you lose 2? Amar Rav Chisda, Rabbi Yishmael beno shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, Tanya Rabbi Yishmael beno shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, Omer b'shel kabayim haya machnis. Okay, so we have another totally different opinion. Ishmael says, when you go into the Kodesh, when the golden shovel, you don't have to bring 3, it's enough to bring 2. So therefore, he could follow the Rabbanan, that you have 4 altogether at the beginning with the silver shovel. You transfer it into one that holds only 2, so you lose 2. So that's how it works. Okay, so now he would be the author of that Baraita. I can even explain it according to the Biyoseh, who says it goes from 6 to 3. We know measurements increased over time. There was inflation. And during the times of the desert, the se'ah only held 5 kab. Later on, it increased to hold 6 kab. So when he said se'ah, he meant a one that holds 5 kab. So the silver would hold 5, and he pours it into the gold, which holds 3. But those are 3 of the new kabim. And what you have is 2 left over that fall on the floor. So therefore, using different types of different time period measurements, we can make it work. Okay, excellent. Every day he used a heavy shovel. Today a light shovel, because again, it's a lot of hard work for him, so we don't want him to get tired out. Every day the walls were thick, and I guess you need thick walls. You're holding hot coals, and you got to push them around, so it would make sense for durability. But for today, one day use only, we use one with thin walls of the shovel. Every day I had a long, short handle. Today a long handle. Short handle, you have to hold it with your hand only, and that's hard to do. As a long handle, he can tuck it under his arm, and that way have more stability and make it easier for him. Okay, so this Braita teaches that there was something else like a ring at the edge. We have a picture here. Here's the usual one, that's silver, has no ring. The golden one has a ring at the end. Why? So one opinion is that the Kohen Gadol, when he's wearing Bigdei Kehuna Gedolah and the long robe and everything, he has bells on the bottom, right? The bells make noise. It brings him honor to do that. But when he's wearing the 4 garments only, which he is wearing when he goes into Kodesh Kodashim, he's not going to have the bells. So we need something else that will make noise. And so this ring at the edge will tinkle and be a replacement and give that, the glory that's appropriate for him. That's one opinion. Others say it's like a covering so the embers don't go out. Anyway, that's an extra item that was on the golden shovel that the Kohen Gadol used on Yom Kippur. Excellent. So now what's one small last section about gold, since you mentioned gold. And every day, on every day, the gold that they used was like greenish or yellowish. But on Yom Kippur, they used red gold to be symbolic of also the red of the blood that they'd be sprinkling, also in the Kodesh Kodashim and in the Kodesh. So now we learn there's actually 7 different kinds of gold. And this is just, you take a concordance and you look up gold in the Tanakh, you'll find that all these different types are mentioned. So there's just Zahav, plain old, Zahav Tov, good gold, Zahav Ophir, Zahav that comes from a place called Ophir, Zahav Mufaz, Zahav that glitters, Zahav Shachut, we're going to explain what that means. Like they're going to say that's like a chut, like it's you can make it like a string. Zahav Sagur, closed gold, we'll explain what that means. So Zahav Parvayim gold. What is this? Zahav is Zahav Tov, Dichtib, Zahav Haaretz, Hahi Tov. Some pronounce Uzahav Haaretz, Hahi Tov. So this is in Gan Eden. It talks about regular Zahav, but that Zahav was especially good wherever that the river, one of the rivers went to, maybe the one that goes through Africa. Zahav Ophir, that Ophir comes from Ophir. Zahav Mufaz, why is it called Mufaz? Because Tomela Paz is like pearls, it shines. Zahav Shachut Shenitveh Kechut. Shachut is a concatenation of 2 words that you can spin it like a thread. Zahav Sagur, Sagur means it's such fine gold, like pure gold, that when someone's selling it, all the other shops close down because no one else would want to shop in any other shop except the one that has that gold. So it's called zahav that closes all the other shops. And finally, zahav parvayim shedome ledam haparim. Parvayim resembles the blood of bulls. Well, maybe that sounds like the red one, and that would be the appropriate one to use on Yom Kippur. Rav Ashi adds one more thing about gold. Amad Amishahen. There's actually 5 kinds of gold, not 7. Within each of the 5 categories, there's the regular level and zahav tov. Altogether, it's 5 times 2, 10 different types. Tanyana me'achi b'chol yom haya zahav hayarok v'ayom adom haynu zahav parvayim shedomeh ledam haparim. And so now this is a braita that supports the definition of that parvayim means parim, that on Yom Kippur you use this reddish shaded gold because it's similar to the dam of parim. So that's the appropriate one for Yom Kippur. Baruch Adonai Olam, amen ve'amen.